Well, hello everybody. My name is TJ. God has laid it upon my heart to go into His Word, put it on YouTube. Hopefully, the overarching goal is to just spread God's Word across the world, to speak His words in the atmosphere, as I know and people know it's changing, life changing, it's disrupting the enemy. And we are just trying to cause as much disruption as possible within the world, especially given events that are surrounding us and things that are in the works or planning to come. If you are a believer, you know Yeshua or Jesus is coming back soon. Our job is to be ready. Our job is to have ourselves ready, talk to other people about Yeshua and his return, and just to get his bride, which is his church, us ready, and to just prepare for his return. So, going through book of Proverbs, I'm going to do one chapter a week. Hopefully, it speaks to you, and you can learn some things from it, as I have learned, and I am still continuing to learn. So that's a good thing about Proverbs. There's a lot of things you can take out of it and apply to your life. So, if you're new to this channel, great. But we'll get some background into Proverbs itself. I got some notes on another screen, so I'm looking down. I'm not. It's not that I'm not paying attention to you. I'm just trying to make sure I stay on track. So, backgrounds around Proverbs. It was written during the reign of King Solomon, or around that era. King David's son was the current king of Israel. Solomon has been, if not, is one of the wisest people to live on earth. Okay. God asked Solomon for what he wanted. You know, if it was me, if it was other people, maybe they would say, "Hey, I want riches. I want to be powerful. I want to have a huge house, multiple wives, whatever the case was." But in the case of Solomon, what he wanted was wisdom. God was pleased by the request and granted wisdom because he knew it was from his heart, and it wasn't just something, he like our parents say, you're telling me something I want to hear. No, that was Solomon's heart and his intention. You could reference that in Second Chronicles chapter 1, 7 through 12, and I'll put that down below somewhere. So that's where that reference as far as Solomon gaining his wisdom. Okay. So starting off, Proverbs 1:1, since it was inspired, we know, or hopefully you do know, that God's word is, or his word is his Bible. I got one down here. I might pull it up from time to time. It's right there. I got a couple more as well. But his word is written by men, but is inspired by God. A lot of Proverbs was contributed by King Solomon and others, but we know that all good things come through the Father. Talks about that in James 1:17. There's a lot of wisdom in the 31 chapters of this book, for sure. My goal is just to glean some wisdom from it, from the chapter in the 30s to come, and see how I'm faulting in my life, how I can do better. Hopefully how you can see some things, and maybe God just speaks to your heart and pulls you away from stuff, or maybe even just gives you to question and see if there's other ways to approach things. But there's a lot of wisdom in this book, and we'll get into it. So Proverbs 1:1 just starts kind of the preface of it. Who it was written by. It was written by Solomon and others. Proverbs 2-6. If you read it closely, the entire purpose of the book is laid out right within those 4 or 5 verses. Okay. It's basically to know wisdom, to receive instruction, and to gain understanding. Without wisdom, it's hard to understand a lot. So wisdom is just for everyday tasks. So let's just say, for instance, is it wise to speed down the road at 55 when it says 35? No consequence may happen. That's definitely sure, but is it wise to do that? Is it going to get you anywhere faster going an extra 20 miles an hour? Probably not. It's not going to save you that much time. But what are the consequences of that action? You get a ticket, collision, something else happens. So we need wisdom just in our everyday life to just make good decisions, and that's pretty basic. Proverbs 1:7 is really where it talks about where you get wisdom from. Okay, there's really only one place to get wisdom from. We'll talk about it in this chapter as well as chapter 2. It kind of talks about it a little bit more. But it says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction." So again, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Okay. So what's the fear of the Lord, right? So the fear of the Lord is kind of like when you have kids, or just let's just say you're in a leadership role. Let's put it. You have a reverence for that person, especially a child to their parent. They have reverence for that person, or at least they should. It's submission to knowing that God knows more than you. You're submitting to His will, because it's not a mechanical formula that you're going to gain wisdom by reading books. Sure, you might get some practical understanding, some practical knowledge, but with wisdom, there's other things that we don't have. I would say it's kind of like out of our, the word that's coming is jurisdiction. It's out of our realm of understanding. It's out of things that we don't know, right? We can only see the now. God can see the past, present, and the future. So He already knows what's going to happen based on your decisions, but we don't. So He obviously has that wisdom and that foresight. So to gain wisdom is not mechanical. Like I stated before, it's not reading books, but it's through a right relationship with God. Okay, that's really where it's going to start. God's going to be the driver of everything in your life. I've seen Him play huge parts in my life, bring my wife into the mix, having children, people around me. Without His hand on my life, I don't think a lot of things would have happened, or if I wasn't sensitive to His spirit, or even let's just say open to it, or or for instance, I'll go on and when you talk about in chapter 2, I was in a bad situation. I wasn't really doing what I should be doing, and God kind of just throws something out there to see if I'll catch His attention. But the main thing is you have to have a right relationship with God, or you're not going to have wisdom. You're not going to have understanding. You need to have that submissive relationship with God, because, like I said, He can see the end of where you want to go. So the question really becomes: so if God knows the path, why would you trust yourself over Him? Right? So we're just like we're building a building. So, for instance, we're building a building. Would you trust yourself with little knowledge and understanding of how the building is built, or would you want to go to the expert? I'm going to go to the expert. I don't know how to build a building. I know it needs, foundation, walls, and trusses, and all that stuff. I know some basic stuff, but if you told me, hey, TJ, you need to go outside. Here's all the stuff. No blueprints. I need you to build a shed. I'd be like, I might get close, but it's not going to be near the quality of what it should be. So that's just an example. So if someone has a blueprint, knows what's going to happen, has your best outcome, and he is going to go before you, he wants to provide the best for you, why would you not seek his advice, and why would you not lean into him to gain that insight? So if you're a non-believer, right, you don't believe, you read this, you read the Bible, you say, oh, well, I don't believe in God, I don't have a God. But if we're playing like a mental game, just like the builder before, and I previously addressed that, would you want to have a relationship with a quote-unquote life expert to get you to the place, excuse me, where you're going to thrive the most. So if you have someone who knows all ends, you are going to thrive the most in that position, in that scenario. You don't know where that is, right? You're just getting out of high school, or that's a good start, right? You're just getting out of high school or going to college. You don't know what to do. You've done your basic education, learning. Would you rather have a life expert that knows where you're going to go, how you're going to thrive the most, and be successful? Of course. It's a pretty simple answer, right? I would rather personally have someone tell me what I need to do and how to get there versus me relying on my own understanding, my own intuition, the gurus, quote unquote gurus on the internet. I'd rather look to God and say, "Hey, God, I don't know what I need to do. I think I should take this job. I think I should do this." It is forever in your hands. He's going to bless you wherever you're at, for sure. It may not be as big of a blessing because he wanted you over there, or it might be a deterrent or a path that's kind of taking a long route to get to where he wants you to be. So, going back to the verse, it talks about fools despite wisdom and instruction. So, what is a fool when it says in the Bible? They're easily led, they're gullible, they're silly. They're mentally naive and morally irresponsible. We know a lot of those people. I can be a fool at times. I could be gullible. I could be easily led. I could be deceived, for sure. I would say it more in my younger years before I met my wife. I was foolish in relationships, believing other people, not having a whole lot of discernment, or thinking, "Oh yeah, I think this is it," but it's really not, because I didn't really ask God for direction. And I know a lot of people can relate to that. Just know, I will never be perfect, ever. I'm not holier than thou. I'm not super righteous. I'm not going to be any less flawed, maybe a little bit, but I'm super flawed in a lot of things I need to work on. I'm a sinner. I'm not going to be perfect. That's why, as believers in Yeshua, we know that he took this burden of sin, gave me everlasting life, right? So even though we're going through this, I've been a fool. I've been a silly person. I'm a sinner. That's why God sent his son and took that burden, right? So back on topic, back on into the chapter. So chapter, sorry, not chapter, but Proverbs 8-9. So the beginning of this passage is addressing about what you hear and listen to the instruction of those who are over you, especially mother, father. Hopefully you have both in your life, or one or the other, even I would say a grandparent, someone that's been there, done that, right? Lean into their knowledge, be obedient. If you're a younger kid, you need to be obedient to your parents. I wasn't obedient all the time, as I believe my mom will tell you. As I got older and I kind of got a car and you're doing your own thing, got your own money, you think you know everything, you don't. I wasn't obedient all the time. My parents raised me, even though I was quote unquote a bastard child, which basically means conceived before marriage. Raised by my mother and my stepdad. Didn't really know my real dad, but from my parents, my mom and my dad, my stepdad, well, who is really my dad? I've known him for 20 something years now, 28 years. I'm here because a lot of their guidance, a lot of the stuff that they've set in place in their teachings. My mom has always been about faith, right? Faith in Yeshua first. He's not going to leave you astray, as it says in Proverbs 3, verse 6. And always your and always acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. Okay. Um, so hey God, I need a job, right? For instance, I prayed, hey God, should I take this job? Should I still be a personal trainer? Should I be doing something else because I have more kids? You got to acknowledge God in all things. He's not going to lead you astray. You're going to have a peace. You're either going to have a peace or you're going to have maybe a little bit of discomfort or not really knowing that that's good. So that's typically the Spirit telling you one way or the other. But He is going to direct your path. You just got to be sensitive. You got to have that relationship like we talked about in the beginning, because that's knowledge, but that's also a lot of discernment. All right, my stepdad or my dad, who I call my dad, he's always taught me to take no shortcuts, work hard. It's pointed out in Proverbs 12:24, the hand of the diligent shall bear rule, but the slothful shall be under tribute. So basically, the people who aren't pulling their weight are going to be under the people that are, right? So let's just say, for instance, you're in a company, everybody's working really hard. Let's just use an example. We're all McDonald's, we're working really hard. There's one guy that's just going above and beyond. They're going to be typically a manager, shift supervisor, right? It's not that you are a slave to them or anything, but you have to be directed by their guidance because they are technically your boss, right? So it's something along those lines. Hopefully you understand that. But by their example, my parents, so like going back to what it says in the previous verses, it talks about hearkening to the people that are above you, their knowledge. There's my mother's knowledge is always seek Yeshua. My dad's is work hard, no shortcuts. By their example at a young age. So my parents got married when I was 7. Obviously, they've been together since then. It instills those biblical truths in my life that now in an older age I can look back on and hopefully expand on those or pass those down to my children. So moving on in verse 10 through 14, it talks about sinners. We're all sinners, of course. I'm a sinner, like I addressed it earlier. That's why He sent His Son Yeshua, died on a cross, took our sins. But it specifically, though, it talks about those who are trying to lure you away from the righteous path. So they're trying to entice you. They're trying to say, "Hey, come over here. You can get really rich." It was namely at somebody else's expense. What it talks about in the chapter, it talks about it taking someone else's riches at an innocent person's expense. And in this case, it would be killing them or whatever the kids use nowadays for that word. But we're causing someone harm, taking their riches. It's talking about stay away from those people, right? We don't want to be enticed by them. We don't want to be even harken an ear to that. We just want to stay away as far as possible and have the relationship with God and His discernment and knowledge and understanding that He provides to know when you hear that, you're like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think that's a good idea, right? Or I'm just, hey guys, I'm not going out and partying tonight. It just doesn't, I'm not doing that tonight, or whatever excuse you got to come up with. Just say, hey, I'm not going. Just tell them you're going to Bible study. They're probably not going to ask questions after that. They might razz on, give you a hard time, but they're probably not going to push the subject too much. But really, in summary, it's just saying, hey, come over here. We're gonna swallow you up as a grave because you're going to lead down a path that unalives that person. We're going to take their stuff, but we're all into this together. It's just like those Hollywood robbery movies. The robbers get away or they split the take of the job. It's the same kind of thing it's talking about here. But it's talking about staying away from those kind of people. You could spot them pretty easily if you're rolling in those crowds. It's going to be very easy to understand. If you're not in those crowds, you could hear it. You know that typically what they're saying is not a good thing, so you just want to stay away from All right. 15 to 16, and we're still in Proverbs 1, talks about a few things. One, it says, "My son, refrains from the foot, their path, and know that their foot run to do evil and shed blood." It's the same thing. We're just reiterating the same thing. Get off the path. They're going to be doing bad stuff. They're going to be shedding of blood in this case. Obviously, that's the worst case scenario, but they're doing something bad, right? We don't want to be a part of that. We want to get away from it as fast as possible. We want to not even be in the vicinity of when that's happening. Proverbs 17 through 19. This is something I thought was pretty funny, right? So it states, even birds see nets that are laid out before them, so a person should be able to see the end of the trap. How easy is it to catch a bird when the netting is set up? Like, let's just say, we're trying to catch a wild animal, right? You typically got to entice them in with food or something for them to go into that. But if you just leave like a raccoon cage out in the middle of the wild, you might get lucky and get something. But typically, you have to put something in there to entice them to go in. But if you just put a trap out, you're like, all right, let's see what happens. I'm probably not going to get something. So a person should be able to see those traps laid before them, even if there is an enticing thing. So, for instance, right, someone's asking you to commit a crime. You can, let's say, rob someone. Okay, so let's just say, I'll use my kids for example. So my kids, they're going to rob their dad of his wallet, right? Two outcomes: you get away with it, or you don't. My kid steals from me. Steals my mouse. Here's my mouse. There it is. Off my desk, right? He's either going to get away with it, I'm not going to find out, or I'm going to find out and there's going to be consequences to those actions. So there's really no, it's very black and white. You're either going to get caught or you're not going to get caught. And it kind of leads into the whole thing with Charlie Kirk, right? So let's kind of go into that really quick, right? So on the surface, what happened to him was very bad. I would say, thoughts, prayers to his family, right? I would say what's even more curious is what happened to the influence of the person who caused the incident to happen, and how did he get to the point. The news say, hey, it's XYZ, but there's always something more to that. And we're using this as an example because we're going to go back up top as it talks about staying away from those kind of people, getting on the path of God, having God's relationship so you can understand discernment. So when we're going to take Proverbs 1 through 19, so we're talking everything we talked about so far. You got to have a understanding with God in the beginning, or you got to fear the Lord to understand knowledge. You're going to have that knowledge. You're going to have the relationship to gain understanding, discernment, things of that nature. You are harping to the people that are above you for their knowledge as well, to hopefully they can guide and direct your paths. And then 3, it's having that discernment that God gives you because you have his wisdom and his understanding, and you're leaning into him for that guidance to know, hey, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Right? Let's take all that in consideration. So we know everything's speculative. I don't know a lot about Tyler, his situation. Just doing some Google searches, I understand he was a Mormon background. Limited research. They teach the Bible, so he knows what the Bible says. In the first 19 verses of Proverbs, it always talks about fearing the Lord, like I just said, beginning of wisdom, and do not be lured by sinners, right? So he understands the Bible. I'm hoping he read Proverbs at one point in his life, or his family directed him to that path, to read it for himself and kind of do some research, or just, I would say, the more you read the Bible, the more you understand it, and the more you can self correct yourself. But also, it gives you a deeper understanding of who God is and how He wants to live your life. Okay. So back to Tyler's upbringing, right? Mormon. He read the Bible. So there's some questions that need to be asked. One, it's going to be directed towards the church, right? I don't know anything about the church or the pastor or anything about it. So what was the church teaching this young man? Was it biblical? That's one question needs to be asked. Do they look to the word for life's instruction, or do they lean into something else? Because I know with Mormons, there's other books that they talk about. I don't know anything about it, but those questions need to be asked, right? In Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6, which reads, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understandings. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your path straight." So just by taking that verse, and if he was taught anything about the Bible, we need to ask what he was being taught. If he was going through stuff, was he taught to go back to the Bible, or even just maybe not go to the Bible, just pray and talk to God and seek direction. There's plenty of times that I've been in my younger days led down a path that I felt that was bad. Listening to certain music, I thought there was not like crazy stuff going on, but I felt an uneasiness about it, so I got rid of it, and I felt that burden come off. So it's really just having that discernment and that trust that God knows what's going on, but your ability to not ignore those warning signs and to take action when it's needed. So if God is telling you, for instance, "Hey TJ, you got to stop drink A&W root beer," right? I got one over here. Okay, because it's going to lead to diabetes, bad health, what have you, right? I have to take those warnings, and that's obviously just an example. But Tyler, just definitely needed to have that sort of, let's just say, structure to know that he needs to go to the Word, he needs to go to God and the Lord just to pour out his concerns and hopefully be receptive to His instruction and to His direction as to where He's telling him to go, or hey, you need to stop associating with these people. Okay, whatever it is. So the second part of the questioning is, who were those people around him influencing his thoughts? Was it his social friends? I know there's stuff on Discord groups, etc. Who were those people pouring into him to get to this point to commit those acts? So in Ephesians 6:12, a lot of people have talked about it. Valuetainment, Vinny on Valuetainment, and some of the other cast members have said in Ephesians 6:12, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in heavenly places." So, in layman's term, what does that mean if you're a non-believer, right? There's evil out there that you do not see, you do not hear. It is a spiritual warfare that is being conjured up by wicked people that are inviting them into their houses. It's being conjured up by Hasatan, or Satan as himself. And we need to combat against those things. You need to set your eyes on the Lord. You need to be repentant. You need to seek His instruction, because there are things going in the heavenly realms that we do not see we do not perceive that are going on all the time. For instance, I'll give you a good example. So yesterday I I was backing my car out and I hit my light post and I broke it. I'm like, oh, I'm so mad. I'm getting really aggravated. I'm trying not to blow a fuse because I typically go from like 0 to 100, and it's not typically good. I knew it was my fault, so I'm like, I should have been paying attention. Yada yada yada. I'm going downstairs to get some stuff to fix it, and I could feel the anger just getting riled up. I'm talking to myself. I'm like, oh, I should have done this. Why did this person do that? Blah blah. Giving excuses is one thing, but I could feel the anger just riling up inside of me. And I stopped for a second. I recognized that. I said, "Not today, Satan. Not today. Today, Satan was not going to rob me of my joy of what we were doing. Where were we actually going to a fall um, festival party with our community?" And I don't, obviously, having a bad mood going into that is just going to ruin the entire evening, or just diminish it some. But I had to take control and say, not today, saying he's not going to steal my joy, or it's my fault. It happens. It's not a big deal, right? Just do what I need to do, fix it, make sure it's safe, move on. But that's that thing, right? This is a very, very small context of the enemy is trying to get in, however little. Well, he sees a little crack in there. He tries to slither in, and he tries to steal your joy, and he tries to put you off what you should be doing. But it's your job to see that and be like, nah, no, sorry, you ain't coming in. Block that off. Pray whatever you need to pray over that. Say not today, say, and just move on your way. Okay, he's definitely gonna do that all the time. So when it comes to the spiritual warfare, we always got to be prevalent. But when it comes to Tyler's parents, did the parents see what was going on? What were they doing to combat that evil that's trying to take over his mind and actions, right? Did they see something changing in Tyler that they needed to pray for? Were they even taught to pray for that? I don't know. I hope and I pray that was the case. And it talks about in Proverbs 2, wisdom is going to be described as a woman in the streets yelling. God's going to yell as much as he can to get your attention as many times. Eventually, if you do not listen, he's just going to let those things happen. Because it's just like you talk to your kid, right? I got to say my son's name like 17 times before he listens to me. It's the same concept here. So what were his parents doing? I hope that his parents were praying for Tyler, and that they were combating the evil that was going around him to influence his actions to take place. I know there's conspiracies around it, but we're going to take this into account that Tyler wasn't the one who did it, right? Or allegedly did it. But what were the spiritual things that were going on behind the scenes that we don't see? And if his parents saw what was going on, were they praying? Were they trying to combat the evil that there was taking a hold of their son, or they didn't, or just did they not see it? Right? It does happen, and that's why we need to have that discernment. So those are the questions you got to ask. You got to ask the Tyler. You got to ask the community. Were they teaching things that were biblical? What things were influencing this young man to commit to do what he did? What was his parents doing? The community praying for him all the time so he would get out of that situation, so he'd come back to Yeshua. Those are the questions that need to be asked. Okay. Personally, kind of circling back, I know my mom prayed for me without ceasing, because there were times in my life that I was going down wrong paths. And I know that there was a spiritual warfare for my soul. I know it. There was too many things that was very enticing that would take me away from God, and I was coming back, right? I was drifting away for a while. I was kind of going down this path, and then something would happen, and I'd come back. So I know that it was there. I thank my mom for just being very diligent and praying for me all the time, and she still continues to do that. So I know when I have my children, I'm going to be praying for them as they get older, and I do now. But it's a spiritual warfare that we're dealing with, and it's for the soul of the nation. It's for the soul of those people, to whether they're going to be on doing good things, bad things. So, um, but we know that everyone, even Tyler, is God's creation. We're all in a warfare for the soul, right? His soul is compromised. Satan got in, influenced his mind to do certain things, and he did them. Those that are believers, we're going to be under attack all the time. We might not be influenced by it. We're going to be under attack. People that are non-believers or don't think Satan exists are probably going to be more so. Or maybe, hey, Satan's got him and he's not worried about him. But it's up to, let's just say, if you're under the age of understanding, I would say, let's just say in your parents' house and they're 18, it's up to the parents. You got to be diligent and pray for him, and in this case, mine, I use the Bible. It pulls you along, it corrects your past. Right, I was still going to church. Sometimes it's just something that comes out of left field and hits you. You're like, okay, I gotta change that. But it's all ultimately up to that person to choose correction or not. So, like I said, wisdom in Proverbs 2 talks about wisdom being a woman in the streets yelling. He's gonna try to bring you in. Hey, TJ, I got some cool stuff over here. I want to talk to you about this. Hey, you're not. And eventually, he's gonna get to the point where it's like, all right, I tried 20 times or whatever that limit is, and something happens. So, um, I do know that I don't know Tyler from anyone else. I don't know his family. I only know what I've seen on the internet, what I've heard. But I do know what it says in the Bible, right? In Matthew 5, verse 44, it's a biblical passage where Jesus commanded his followers to love their enemies, and pray for those who persecute them. So if you're in Turning Point USA and you're affected by obviously the death of Charlie, that's what you need to work on, right? You gotta know that God already knew it was going to happen, and just pray to that something happens with Tyler and he sees sees the Lord, and hopefully that he turns his life around. But we just got to pray for our enemies and people that persecute us. That's all we can do, right? We're not going to change their heart. God's going to do it. He might use us as a vessel to change that, or to have a conversation, or to plant a seed. But God's ultimately going to be the one that changes that. But we got to be open to correction. Okay. All right. So back to Proverbs 20. Back to Proverbs 1, verses 20 through 33. All right. Kind of wrap this thing up. Wisdom is God in this sense. And when I said Proverbs 2 is actually Proverbs 1, my bad, about wisdom in the streets. So wisdom is God is depicted as a woman yelling in the street, telling everyone, hey, come over here and learn. Many people want to turn away, and only few people will turn in to get what wisdom and this woman is talking about. So God's like, hey, come on over. Come on. My house is full. I got desserts. I got food. I want to talk to you about stuff. But a lot of people are just going to ignore it, turn away from it. They don't care. It talks about mentioning scorners, which are people who are proud, arrogant, they're troublemakers. And the question is, are you especially proud? I'm guilty. I can be proud at times. I can be arrogant at times, for sure. When I think I know things, in a group, let's just say I'm in a group, we're talking about football. I'm just using, I don't have an for instance right now. I'm talking about football and said, oh yeah, this player's great. Oh, that person's actually bad. I don't know anything about it. So that's just a thing. We can move on from there. I know that, let's just say if that's for an instance, I know I don't like to be corrected. I don't like to be guided by someone else, especially when I was younger, by my parents, especially most people when they're by their parents. I think once they start to reach the age of 12, maybe 15, I'm not really sure. I will find that out soon enough. Um, but as age comes insight, age comes insight. I could see that there's a lot of wisdom my parents had, life lessons that I could have avoided, but decided not to avoid, or maybe I did avoid them. Hopefully, there's more that I avoided than I actually went through on. So there's that. I think most people can fall into the category of a scorner at some point in their life. It's just not to be stuck there, right? I don't want to be so arrogant, so proud. I don't want to be a troublemaker. I don't want to be, let's just use if proud and arrogant, right? I don't want to be so proud and arrogant that I close off learning from other people that know more than me, or God in this instance, right? If we're leaning to God, I don't want to shut that out. If you're a non-believer and you're leaning other people, I don't want to shut out other people and saying I know everything, because I don't. Um, so I would say we don't want to be stuck there. Um, Most successful people do have some pride, because they have pride in their work and they know things. But I would say that the most successful people want to learn from others and will take correction and say, "Oh, hey, I didn't actually think of that. So that's better for my business because I can do things a certain way." I would say the more you listen to people, take some advice from outside perspective, you can definitely change that. But there's also, you need to have some discernment as to who you listen to, and who you take that direction from. If you are taking it in a vacuum, I would trust God first as much as you can. He knows more than anybody else is going to know. Okay, especially when it comes to your life. Maybe he's not going to tell you how to solve some complex science formula to get a rocket into space, right? He might tell you where to go to look, or he might put someone in your path if you are turned off and not taking advice, or too proud and arrogant. That person might not be able to speak to you. So there's just things to take into consideration. All right. So harping back on 20 through 25, like I said, it talks about the woman in the street telling people to come listen to her, gain wisdom, understanding. Scorners, we already discussed, they don't want wisdom. They're too proud. They don't want a correction. And they try their hardest. Hey, come on in. Hey, don't do that. Don't do this. Don't do that. Just like you're talking to kids, don't eat that dirt. You're going to get sick. You're going to get to the point where wisdom's just like, I'm done. I warned you so many times. Just like your parents, right? Let's just say, or someone who's taking a test. Oh, I've studied. I studied all year. I learned all this stuff all year. I don't need to study to take this test. And you fail the test. Wow. That's wisdom right there. You probably should study for those tests. Okay. It's almost like whoever was giving you that advice knew it was going to happen, if you knew what was going to be the outcome if you didn't decide not to study. Right? Same thing. All right. All right. Same thing with wisdom. In 26 through 30, she's trying to correct. She's trying to offer counsel, wisdom, and you just say, I'm good. Hence, she'll just sit back and laugh when stuff happens. It says in Proverbs 1:26, I will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your fear cometh. Then when you try to call it to God and be like, hey, something's happening. He's going to be absent. You made the choice. You got to live with it. He's going to be there for. I would argue that he's going to be there to comfort you in your bad call if your heart's sincere. But you're also going to go through that too, because it's a learning experience. He's not just going to pull you out of a situation because of your bad choices. Okay. You made the choice to not heed his call, and you're going to reap those consequences. They hated knowledge. They didn't fear the Lord. Pretty simple. He's there. He's willing to give you the direction and course correction you need. It's up to you to reject him or not. Okay. In verse 29, it talks about you basically rejected him, and when you're in times of trouble, he will not be found. Okay. Verse 31, 32, at the end of this chapter, wraps things up. You will eat the fruit of your own way. And do you choose to follow God or your own way? his way or the highway thinking, right? Do you choose to follow God's way and all his stuff's going to lead you to prosperity and where he wants you to be in your life, or your own way, which you will eventually destroy yourself? That's where it comes down to. Verse 33, but whoso hearketh unto me shall dwell safely and shall be quiet from fear of evil. So unto me is God in this reference. But hey, if you hearketh unto God, you're going to be good. If you're somewhere else, you're not going to be good. All right. All right. In summary, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Wisdom will give you discernment from the snares of the enemy and sinners. Wisdom will call out to you all the time, but if you choose to reject that call, you'll be left to the consequences of your own devices and choices you make. But if you choose to follow God and trust that all his ways are good, then you will dwell in his safety. So Proverbs 1, we are coming up at close. Take that into consideration. So really the question is, do you want to choose to follow God, or do you want to choose to follow in your own understanding? See you next time, guys.